Commissioner Ben-Veniste.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, sir.
I'd like to start first by commending our staff for an extraordinary, detailed 18-month investigation which has provided the detail which we have provided today to the American public. I want to say that nothing that we have found indicates anything but the highest commitment to duty and valor among the pilots and support personnel involved in the air mission on that infamous day of September 11th, 2001. By the same token, General Myers, our staff has found that NORAD and FAA were unprepared for the type of attacks launched against the United States on September 11, 2001. And so I would like to ask you, sir, whether you and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs were made available, were made aware of the available information during the Summer of Threat in 2001, which reflected the preparations by al-Qaeda for a spectacular attack against the United States, and specifically whether the information in the August 6th PDB was shared with you or the chairman of the Joint Chiefs.
We were aware, I think it started, some of this information started flowing, intelligence information, at the end of May. It continued through June, July, the August 6th memo. It talked, as I recall, about al-Qaeda threat to United States, primarily overseas. It was focused primarily on the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, is my memory of that. And that threat reporting continued through those months, and we were certainly aware of it. But in fact, we even took action when, I think it was in July, we actually sorted some ships out of Bahrain because of the threat in the peninsula area. And that, as I recall, the estimate from the intel analysis was that it would take place either on the Saudi Peninsula, perhaps in Turkey. There was one mention I remember of Italy, actually. And then there was potential threats to the United States, but never including an aircraft.
Now, the PDB memo that I'm referring to specifically mentions FBI information of suspicious activity within this country consistent with the preparations for hijackings. Was that information shared with you?
Not information at least that I saw, other than what was contained in the Presidential Daily Brief Memorandum, which I think was the last couple of paragraphs or last paragraph.
Was information shared with you, General, with respect to the arrest of Mr. Zacharias Moussaoui, which occurred on or about the 17th of August, in which the FBI quickly came to the conclusion that Mr. Moussaoui was a suicide hijacker, an individual with jihadist connections who had sought and received some training on a commercial airliner?
I don't recall. I simply can't recall. I think I would have, but I don't recall.
Wouldn't that be something that you would recall?
Don't know, but pretty significant information, but I don't recall.
Had you received such information tying together the potential reflected in the August 6th PDB memorandum that was titled "Bin Laden Determined to Strike in the United States," together with this additional information, might you have followed up on a training scenario at the least, such as the positive force training scenario where a hijacked plane was presumed to fly into the Pentagon, a proposal that was made and rejected in the year 2000?
Well, a couple of things. I don't know that we would have, because exercising alone is not enough. If you look at all, and you've looked at all the policy guidance we've gotten through the 90s into early 2000, 2001, all the policy guidance was that we treat terrorism primarily as a criminal event. And the role of the Defense Department was to defend our forces primarily. It was force protection, anti-terrorism, not counterterrorism. Counterterrorism responsibilities domestically were the FBI, externally were the CIA. There was an exercise, and this was, the idea was to stress the continuity of command, and the one you referenced there, but it was an exercise focused on Korea, and that's why the scenario was rejected, because it did not contribute to the exercise at hand. I can't answer the hypothetical. It's more, it's the way that we were directed to posture, looking outward. Those were the orders that NORAD had and has had for ever since the end of the Soviet Union, when we had, at that time, I think it was 26 alert sites around the United States, and we'd gone down to 7. So it would required more than exercising if you wanted to be effective, and it would have been not just the military, because civilian agencies had the major role.
Well, that you've anticipated my next question. It might not be the entire answer, but it would be a start. Let me ask you whether that might not have stimulated an effort to determine the level of communications with FAA, which, as we determined on September 11, were abysmal. Would that not have also stimulated you? Had you thought about the information, had you received it, about an internal threat involving the United States airspace, involving the hijacking of commercial airliners by a suicide hijacker?
Certainly possible, and you just can't take hypothetical situations and say what you would have done in hindsight. I mean, obviously we got pretty good hindsight at this point. The communications between the FAA and NORAD were specifically designed for the hijacking scenario, but a hijacking scenario where NORAD's role was to track the aircraft, if it crashed, to report the crash site, but certainly not to take, it was not, the understandings and the policy at the time was not that these were hostile aircraft, other than the fact they'd been hijacked. So it was to track that and help the FAA track that, and those were the rules that were standing at the time. If we'd had definitive information, I think we would have probably taken steps to
I hope so.
to work that. But to my knowledge, we didn't have that, sir.
Let me direct my remaining time to General Eberhardt and General Arnold. Why did no one mention the false report received from FAA that Flight 11 was heading south during your initial appearance before the 9/11 Commission back in May of last year? And why was there no report to us that, contrary to the statements made at the time, that there had been no notification to NORAD that Flight 77 was a hijack?
Well, the first part of your question, Mr. Commissioner, first of all, I'd like to say that a lot of the information that you have found out in your study of the 911, things that happened on that day, helped us reconstruct what was going on. If you're talking about the American 11 in particular, the call of the American 11, is that what you're referring to?
Yes?
The American 11 that was called after it impacted, is that what you're referring to?
No. I'm talking about the fact that there was miscommunication, that Flight 11 was still heading south instead of having impacted.
That's what I'm referring to. That's correct. As we worked with your committee and looking at that, that was probably the point in time where we were concerned. Remember, that call, as I recall, actually came after United 175 as well as American 11, had already impacted the north and south towers of World Trade Center. And then we became very concerned, not knowing what the call signs of those aircraft were that had hit the World Trade Center. We became very concerned at that particular point that those aircraft, that some aircraft might be heading towards Washington, D.C.
General, is it not a fact that the failure to call our attention to the miscommunication and the notion of a phantom Flight 11 continuing from New York City south, in fact, skewed the whole reporting of 9/11? It skewed the official Air Force report, which is contained in a book called Air War Over America, which does not contain any information about the fact that you were following or thinking of a continuation of Flight 11 and that you had not received notification that Flight 77 had been hijacked.
As I recall, first of all, I didn't know the call signs of the airplanes when these things happened. When the call came that American 11 was possible hijacked aircraft, that aircraft just led me to come to the conclusion that there were other aircraft in the system that were a threat to the United States.
General Arnold, surely by May of last year, when you testified before this commission, you knew those facts.
I didn't recall those facts in May of last year. That's the correct answer to that. In fact,
Well,
as I recall during that time frame, my concern was the question that came to me was, why did we scramble the aircraft out of Langley Air Force Base, the F-16s out of Langley Air Force Base? And there had been statements made by some that we scrambled that aircraft to report of American 77, which was not the case, and I knew that. And I was trying to remember in my own mind, what was it that persuaded us to scramble those aircraft? And I thought at the time it was United 93. But as I was able to, we did not have the times when these things were, when we were notified of this. I did not have that information at that time.
General Arnold,
Didn't have it.
according
And
to
so
our
we scrambled those aircraft to get them over Washington, D.C. to protect Washington, D.C.
according to our staff, you know that there was a substantial problem in getting information from NORAD, that we received information, we were told that the information was complete. We went out into the field, our staff did, and did a number of interviews, and as a result of those interviews, we found that there were tapes which reflected the facts relating to Flight 11, and we found additional information by which we were able, through assiduous and painstaking work, listening to any number of tape recordings, to reconstruct what actually occurred, as you have heard in the staff statement. I take it you have no disagreement with the facts put forward in the staff statement. That's been produced in advance for comment, and I take it you're in agreement now with our staff's conclusions with respect to those facts.
I am.
We have, and I'm not going to go through it, but it is disturbing to see that there were efforts at after-action reports which were available shortly after 9/11. There were communications which our staff has received with respect to emails that reflect some of the facts on nearly a contemporaneous basis with the 9/11 catastrophe that reflect a story which unfortunately is different from the one which was presented to this commission earlier. When you and General Eberhart were asked about the existence of tape recordings reflecting these open line communications, both of you indicated that you had no such recollections.
Mr. Commissioner, I think it's important to note that I did not testify in front of this commission. So to say that I said that day is categorically wrong.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry. You are correct. I will refer to General Arnold's comments, both with respect to,
This is the last question, Commissioner.
thank you.
Yeah, the Northeast Air Defense Sector apparently had a tape that we were unaware of at the time, and and to the best of my knowledge, what I've been told by your staff is that they were unable to make that tape run.
I'm told
And they
by-
were later able to, your staff was able, through a contractor, to get that tape to run. And so, to the best of my knowledge, that was an accurate statement in May, that I did not know of any tape recordings. If I had, if I'd had them available to me, it certainly would have been, I would have been able to give you more accurate information. Our focus was on when the events occurred, and we did not focus on when we didn't have a record. I did not have a record of when we had been told different things.
In order to clarify it, and I apologize again, General Eberhardt, the statement that I was referring to was a statement which we are advised was made to the staff. It was General McKinley, as well as General Arnold. When I asked the question, let me ask you whether there's a regularly made tape recording of these open line communications. General Arnold answered, not to my knowledge, and General McKinley answered, not to my knowledge. It was through the painstaking investigation that discovered these tapes, and then our staff listening to those tapes, which assisted us in being able to provide the level of detail and accuracy which we've done today. Thank you, Mr.